Ditmar throws. Here's a swing and a high fly ball going deep left. This may do it. Back to the wall goes Barra. It is home run. The Pirates win.
A man batted .320 across an entire World Series. He ended Game 7 with a home run no other player has ever matched in more than 100 years of championship baseball. And yet, when the trophy for finest player of that series was handed out, his name was not called. Instead, it went to a player on the losing team. How does a moment this enormous get buried under an injustice like that? William Stanley Mazeroski was born on September 5, 1936, in Wheeling, West Virginia. His father, Louis, had once been a gifted shortstop himself. Cleveland scouts noticed him. A tryout was arranged. Then came the mine. An accident crushed his foot. The dream ended before it truly began. Louis went underground instead, digging coal for a living he never wanted, and slowly he turned to drink. But he refused to let his son follow him into that darkness. Louis taught Bill the game with whatever tools poverty allowed. There is a detail that says everything about this family. When young Bill needed his first real glove, his father paid for it with money earned digging an outhouse. Not a signing bonus, not a scouting stipend. An outhouse? At Warren Consolidated High School, something unexpected happened. This wiry kid from a house with no electricity became a genuine athlete. He earned all-state recognition in basketball. He anchored a baseball team that reached the state championship final, remarkable for a school with only 60 graduates in its senior class. Scouts from 5 different organizations wanted him. He chose Pittsburgh, and only Pittsburgh, because they were the only club willing to let him skip the lowest levels of the minor leagues entirely. He signed for $4,000. Behind every great fielder, there is usually a story about repetition, about hours nobody saw. For Mazeroski, that story began with a father who lost everything and decided his son would lose nothing. Pittsburgh general manager Branch Rickey made a decision early that would shape everything. Mazeroski had signed as a shortstop, but Rickey noticed something else, the arm strength and an uncanny ability to pivot through a double play. He moved him to second base. History would prove him right, but the transition years were rough. Mazeroski debuted on July 7, 1956, and collected a single in his very first plate appearance. Then reality set in. His batting average sat below 200 for weeks. He finished that rookie season hitting barely above 240. The team around him was worse. Pittsburgh finished the 1957 season with more than 90 losses. Their manager was fired mid-year. When Danny Murtaugh took over, Mazeroski later told Sports Illustrated that it felt, in his words, as if an elephant had just climbed down off his shoulders. Then came a personal complication. In October of 1958, he married Mylene Nicholson, a secretary in the Pirates scouting department. It should have been a season of celebration. Instead, he reported to spring training the following year, 15 pounds overweight. He lost range in the field. He pulled a muscle in his leg. His performance collapsed to one of the weakest stretches of his career, even though name recognition alone still carried him to an all-star selection that year. A hitting coach named George Sisler, himself a Hall of Fame first baseman, worked with Mazeroski on using the whole field instead of pulling every pitch. He also told the young infielder to move deeper in the batter's box, to wait a beat longer on breaking pitches. Slowly, painfully, the adjustments began to show results. By the time the calendar turned toward 1960, nobody outside Pittsburgh expected much from this scrappy, undersized second baseman with the modest batting average. Even inside the clubhouse, his glove earned more respect than his bat ever did. They had no idea what was coming. October 13, 1960. Game 7 of the World Series against the New York Yankees at Forbes Field, Pittsburgh. In theory, the shape of this series made no sense. Across the 6 previous games, the Yankees had been completely dominant, outscoring Pittsburgh by an enormous margin and crushing their opponent in 3 lopsided victories. And yet the series score stood tied at 3 games apiece because every single Pittsburgh win had come by the narrowest possible margin. Game 7 quickly descended into chaos. Pittsburgh jumped out to an early 4-run lead. New York fought back fiercely with home runs from Bill Skowron and Yogi Berra pushing the Yankees ahead 7-4 as the game entered the 8th inning. Then Pittsburgh answered. 5 runs scored in the bottom half of the 8th inning, capped by a 3-run home run from Hal Smith. put the home team back in front 9-7. That should have been the end of it. It was not. New York tied the game in the top of the ninth, aided by a sharp piece of base running from Mickey Mantle. With 2 outs already recorded and Mantle racing towards second base, a throw from shortstop Dick Groat sailed off target. Mazeroski stretched his body toward the bag and somehow managed to tag Mantle just as he was sliding in. The legendary sports writer Roger Angell would later call it a play that deserved to be remembered on its own, a moment that history had unintentionally buried beneath everything that happened right after it. Because Mazeroski was the one who led off the bottom of the ninth. Facing Yankees reliever Ralph Terry, he let the first pitch go by. The second pitch was one that Mazeroski himself would later describe as a slider that did not slide. He swung. The ball climbed toward left field, toward the brick wall. This time, it did not stop. It sailed over the wall. Pittsburgh won, 10-9, capturing their first championship since 1925. To this day, across more than a century of modern World Series history, no other player has ever ended a Game 7 with a walk-off home run. Mazeroski remains the only one to have done it. Bing Crosby, one of the co-owners of the Pirates and one of the most famous entertainers of the era, was too nervous to sit at home and watch the game. Instead, he and his wife flew to Paris and followed the action only through radio broadcasts. Before he left, however, he arranged to have the broadcast secretly recorded onto film. Statistically, it was not even the biggest swing of that inning. By the modern measure known as championship win probability, Hal Smith's 3-run home run in the 8th inning actually moved the odds of a Pittsburgh title more than Mazeroski's blast did. Smith's swing turned a deficit into a 2-run lead. Mazeroski's swing, dramatic as it was, came in a situation where Pittsburgh was already favored to win. None of that mattered to the millions who remember it as the signature moment of an entire era, but something else about that day feels far more unjust. Despite batting an outstanding .320 across the full series, despite driving in 5 runs, despite authoring the single most famous ending in the history of the World Series, Mazeroski was not named the most outstanding player of that series. That honor went instead to Bobby Richardson of the New York Yankees, the team that had just lost. Voting had closed earlier in the game, before Mazeroski's home run had even happened. It remains, to this day, the only time in the awards history that it has gone to a player on the losing side. Mazeroski did receive one honor that October, an award for outstanding postseason performance given by New York sports writers. But the bigger prize slipped away on a technicality of timing, a cruel accident of when the ballots happened to close. For nearly 5 decades, the complete broadcast of that game was believed lost forever. Crosby's secret recording sat forgotten in the wine cellar of his California home long after his own passing in 1977. It was only rediscovered by chance when an executive searching for unrelated footage stumbled upon 5 reels of film in gray canisters. Think about that. For 50 years, the only complete visual record of the most famous ending in baseball history sat gathering dust beside bottles of wine, saved by nothing more than one anxious man's superstition. Glory, it turns out, is fragile. It can be denied by a clock. It can nearly be lost to time itself, tucked away and forgotten beside dusty bottles nobody thought to open. And somehow, this was still not the deepest injustice Mazeroski would face. He became eligible for the Hall of Fame in 1978. In his first year on the ballot, he received barely 6% of the vote. Election requires 75%. It was not close. Year after year, the number crept upward, but painfully slowly. He did not reach even 10% until 1983. For 5 more years, his support hovered somewhere in the 30s. In 1992, his final year of standard eligibility, he peaked at just over 42%. Still, nowhere near enough. The criticism was consistent and not unfair on its surface. Mazeroski's fielding was widely admired, but his hitting was another matter entirely. He would finish his career with the lowest on-base percentage of any position player ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. Ted Williams himself, a legend of hitting and a longtime voting committee member, was openly unwilling to support him because of that offensive weakness. Baseball analyst Bill James, among the most respected voices in the sport, put it bluntly at the time. He did not see Mazeroski as a Hall of Famer, whatever other voters believed. For years, his case moved to a smaller veterans committee, reviewed annually, rejected annually. In the year 2000, he fell short by a single vote, just one. Then, in 2001, fate intervened in an almost unbelievable way. Ted Williams, his most vocal opponent on the committee, was absent that year, recovering from open-heart surgery. Without him in the room, the math shifted just enough. Mazeroski was elected. The reaction was immediate and strong. One prominent New York columnist wrote that the committee responsible for correcting past mistakes should now correct itself out of existence entirely. The backlash grew so intense that the Hall of Fame overhauled its entire voting process almost immediately afterward, changing who could vote and how often elections would even be held. August 5th, 2001, Cooperstown, New York. Temperatures pushed past 90 degrees under a relentless sun. Mazeroski walked to the podium alongside two other inductees, Dave Winfield and Kirby Puckett, in front of 40 living Hall of Famers and roughly 20,000 fans crowded onto a hillside. He carried 12 full pages of prepared remarks in his jacket pocket. He began by saying that having his uniform number retired years earlier had once felt like the greatest thing that could ever happen to him. He admitted he never truly believed this day would come. Then his voice broke. He told the crowd he did not think he was going to make it through the speech. He said they could consider those 12 pages finished. He thanked everyone who had traveled so far just to listen to him speak. And then, overcome, he said that was enough, and walked back to his seat in tears. The response was immediate. All 20,000 people rose to their feet. Behind him, several fellow Hall of Famers wiped their own eyes. Kirby Puckett, inducted that same afternoon, said afterward that he felt it for Mazeroski, that he cried for him, and that anyone who could not feel something watching a man break down before finishing his very first sentence simply had no emotion left inside them. There is a reason this moment lands as hard as it does, and it has almost nothing to do with baseball statistics. Mazeroski's father, Louis, the coal miner whose own dream had been crushed by a mining accident decades earlier, had passed away roughly a year and a half before this ceremony. He never got to see his son formally welcomed into Cooperstown. Go back, for a moment, to 1960, to the afternoon of that legendary home run. Even amid the celebration, Mazeroski's thoughts had turned to his father. He told reporters that his father had always wanted to play professional baseball himself, that scouts once considered him a serious talent, and that everything changed the moment a mining accident took his foot. 41 years separated that comment from the tears at Cooperstown. Two moments one father who never got to witness either of them fully realized, at least not in person. Mazeroski later admitted he tried to apologize for how short his speech had turned out. Everyone around him told him not to. They told him it was sincere, and that sincerity was exactly what the moment needed. Sometimes the shortest speeches say the most. A 12-page tribute to a lifetime of work was never delivered, and somehow, the 2 minutes that replaced it told a fuller story than any prepared paragraph ever could have. In 2015, Bill James, the very analyst who once said he did not view Mazeroski as a Hall of Famer, revisited his own fielding metrics with updated methods. His conclusion this time could not have been more different. He wrote that Mazeroski's defensive statistics were probably the most impressive of any player at any position in the sport's history. Among second basemen with at least 1,000 games at the position, James said Mazeroski did not merely lead the list. Retirement for Mazeroski never really meant leaving the game. After his playing career ended in 1972, he moved into coaching, first with Pittsburgh, later with the Seattle Mariners. In 2010, well into his 70s, he personally helped a young player named Neil Walker learn second base. Walker later recalled that the hands were still there, the glove was still there, the footwork was still there. Only the eyes, he said, had slowed down even slightly. People who crossed paths with Mazeroski away from the ballpark tell strikingly similar stories. A man buying ice cream at a small local shop. A man completely without pretense, despite everything he had accomplished. Pittsburgh honored him by retiring his uniform number in 1987. A bronze statue depicting his joyful sprint around the bases was unveiled outside the team's ballpark in 2010 on his birthday. On February 20th, 2026, Mazeroski passed away in Pennsylvania at the age of 89. The team's chairman offered a tribute, saying he would remember Mazeroski most not for the famous home run, but for the person he was, humble, gracious, and endlessly proud to wear a Pittsburgh uniform. Recognition had come slowly for this man his entire life. In the end, it came completely. How does a man deliver the single most famous ending in the history of the World Series and still walk away without the trophy that should have followed? The answer, it turns out, says less about baseball and more about life itself. Recognition rarely arrives on schedule. Sometimes it is delayed by a technicality of timing. Sometimes it is delayed by 15 years of doubt. He was a boy who turned a tennis ball and a brick wall into the foundation of greatness. He was the author of 90 immortal seconds that an entire city has replayed every October since. Bill Mazeroski never needed the world to agree with him right away. He simply kept showing up, kept teaching, kept being, by every account, remarkably himself. Maybe that is the real lesson buried inside this story. Greatness does not always announce itself immediately. Sometimes it waits patiently for decades, for a missing vote, for a lost reel of film, for the right moment to finally be seen. And when it is seen, as it eventually was for Bill Mazeroski, it turns out to have been worth every year of waiting.